Chickacherry Cola, good to see you. How are you? Brock Bandy, what's happening? Wendy Ramirez, good to have you here. Hey, Jane. Hey, Ashley. Timothy, what's happening? So, people, this is this day of the year sucks. I'm sorry, it does, and it's something that we have to do. But I'd be honest with you, I don't enjoy it. Wharton Thistle, how are you? But somebody gave me an idea. I honestly didn't want to do this show at all. I didn't want. This is such a hard subject for me. And I'm not whining, I promise you, but the number of people that have died from drug overdoses since this epidemic started is 1,015,000 individuals. I need to say that again because that's just something that is just such a staggering number, and numbers get lost in the shuffle. That's 1,015,000 people, or 2,030,000 parents that lost kids. God knows how many siblings lost their brothers or sisters. Brandon Calloway, good to see you. How are you? Hey, Barbara. I'm glad that you're here. Hey, Barbara, again, different Barbara. Glad that you're here. These are real people. Is Narcan or an equivalent available in Ecuador? That's an excellent question. I don't know the answer to that. Here's the thing, and this may sound crazy to most people, but overdoses on heroin are not nearly as prevalent as overdoses on synthetic opioids. The reason being that the poppy can only get so strong, and the people that manufacture the dope then cut it. So by the time you get product, if you're getting it out of Afghanistan, you're literally getting it with excrement of goat cut into the stuff. If you're getting it out of the South America, or it's not as much of it made in South America as there is in Mexico and regions of Mexico. But what you're getting instead is usually a sugar kind of a product. Now, there was a period of time in the 90s when that dynamic started to change a little bit in the United States. And the reason is, for the longest period of time, heroin had a street strength in the teens. You might get 17, 18% heroin, and the rest of it was cut. And with tar heroin, that really started to change. When tar came onto the scene, originally there were cells set up throughout the United States. You didn't go to a dealer's house. This was like calling Pizza Hut. You made a phone call, and a cell guy would pick up the phone, and he would call one of 2 or 3 drivers and have you meet at a specific location. And they would, yeah, it's goat crap, Wendy. I'm sorry, but that is what they cut it with. And it's which is nasty, but yeah, that's what the stuff coming out of Afghanistan is usually cut with. It's what they have. B Lady, good to see you. So once they started getting these cells set up all over the United States, it was very regimented. The stuff is sold by the 1/10 of a gram in balloons. You got X number of balloons, for $10, you got a balloon. When you get to spending 100, you might get 13 to 15, depending on how well you knew the dealer or how much money you spent. But it was regimented in that you could only buy from about 9 o'clock in the morning to about 9 o'clock at night. Some places start selling at 7 a.m. to get workers taken care of or whatever. But at 9 o'clock at night, you were not buying any heroin. In order to compete, people just started cutting their dope less. There were so many cells in every single city that you could call. I knew guys that had unbelievable numbers. The number is higher than the population of some states. Absolutely it is. It's way higher than the population of Vermont. And it's a terrifying number because it's also more than all of the people that we've lost in wars in our country, which is hard to think about. Except war, people that die in war are heroes. People who overdose on drugs are considered scumbags. They also happen to be brothers and sisters of mine, people that I love. And we've lost dozens from this channel alone. And with very few exceptions, their names I don't bring back up. I can talk about Cindy because I'm not using her last name, and we've had a lot of Cindys on the boat. I can talk about number 5 because her mother very specifically said, if anything having to do with her story helps anybody, you can tell it. The one that affected me the most, I'll call him D-Man for the sake of his grandmother, because she'll know who I'm talking about. But the gentleman that I worked with for a really long period of time who succumbed to this disease. The symptoms of this disease are hideous, but the worst of the symptoms is how these people leave the planet, right? Drug overdose is the #1 cause of death in America. I do have some good news, and I can't remember saying that since I started the Lifeboat. And that's something, right? I mean, it really is. We peaked out in 2000 and roughly 2023. The difference between 22 and 23 people argue. In 2021, we had 110,000 deaths. In 2022, it went to 112. And they claimed in 2023 that it was 107. And they did that because the last administration, I'm not busting balls, this is just a fact. It's the only number in the entire place that's estimated. Every other number they give you as a fact, except for 2023, which is estimated to be 107,000. And they celebrated that we knocked 5,000 people off. And I'll tell you what, that is 5,000 people that aren't dead. I think that's fantastic. In 2024, they're projecting we're going to hit 80,391. Unless something rowdy happens, it's going to be right in that ballpark. They're pretty good at predicting this stuff. That's a huge drop. And opioid-involved deaths in 2023 had 81,023. They're estimating it's going to be 54,000 this year. That is an unbelievably sizable drop. It is still way too many, right? It is still way too many. It may not be next year the number one cause of death in America. That would be exciting to me. It's frightening to think that you're more likely to lose your child or your loved one or your family member to a drug overdose than a car wreck or to cancer or to heart disease. That's terrifying to me. It really is. And one of the reasons this has been so pervasive is it's very easy to add these synthetic opioids to everything. People look at me like I'm a nut every time I say this, but the good old days were heroin. I'm talking about in terms of safety. That's a drug that you can very easily bring someone back from the dead. If they overdose on heroin and there's anybody there that doesn't want that person to die, normally just hands-only CPR, slapping people in the face, making them super uncomfortable. And I was explaining this to somebody the other day that said to me, I've been talking about overdoses my entire life and I had no idea. There are people that believe your heart explodes or your heart slows down and stops. And what happens is these are respiratory depressants. You chill out so much. There is so much pain medication, right, that you manufacture yourself. This is in your brain. The mu receptor, the mu receptor gets attached by an opioid or an opiate, and it releases the chemical that makes you stop feeling pain. Shocker, if you get your leg cut off at the thigh, your body is going to release a hellacious amount of painkiller into your body. We're designed this way. But we figured out hundreds of years ago that you could take the sap of the poppy plant and you could get your body to hype up the amount of painkiller that it's going to release. So if someone was in pain, by putting these substances into the body that will attach to the mu receptor, you're going to get a flood of painkiller, right? Analgesic that your brain manufactures. But once we started playing around with these opioids, right, you started to get stuff that is the strength of which knows no limit. So let's say, you start off with a poppy plant and we'll give it an arbitrary number of 100. That plant cannot get above 100. That is the sap. It's not going to get any stronger than that. You can screw it up. In the process of taking that sap and turning it into tar, you can leave too much of the chemical in it that you used. There's about 4 chemicals that are required to be used in that process. First, you got to mix it with lye and turn it into like this slurry. And I won't tell you the rest of them because people grow poppies by accident in the United States. But the point is, let's say that you grow a really fantastic batch and you really know what you're doing and you come up with a number of 80 something. That's a very, very strong batch of heroin. Very unlikely to kill people. Even if it puts them into the respiratory failure where you relax so much that you stop breathing. Now, if I hold my hand over your mouth right now and I squeeze your nose and I stop you from breathing, right? Even if you're asleep when it's happening, you're going to go, right? Your body's going to freak out. Your arms are going to flail. You're going to do everything within your power to get whatever's causing you to stop breathing off of you, away from you, whatever the case may be, right? We've all done it. That feeling when you feel like you have to have breath, sometimes if you're underwater, but that feeling of, oh my God, I need a breath right now, goes away. And a person sits on the couch. I was at a very, very close friend named Wally, and Wally shot dope alone on his couch, and he just sort of slumped over into the corner and his face went into the side of the couch, and there was no one in the room with him. And they found him the following morning. He was one of the first overdose deaths that I can remember in my life. And so that there's not a lot of suffering. I know everybody here knows somebody that died. There's not suffering in the process. I have brought so many people back from the dead with either using Narcan or just making them super uncomfortable. Again, you take your knuckle and you put it on a person's sternum and you lean into it hard. You're going to bruise them. It's absolutely awful. but you lean in and you rub up and down on the sternum. It's called a sternum rub. This is a medical thing. And you go up and down and it is awful. It sucks. But you'll go, it jerks the body into doing that reaction. Your diaphragm pulls down and you get a bunch of air in your lungs. And now the person's there and you give them a couple of those in the face. I've told the story on the Love Boat before, but I had a guy come into my cell, and I am no longer a drug addict, right? At this point, I had been off of heroin for a couple of years. Didn't like being around it. Didn't like being around people that were nodding. I was doing this kind of sobriety still. I wasn't in recovery as much as I was chemical free, but I was trying. And these guys came in and said, "You got to help us, man. The dude next door just OD'd." Hindsight being 2020, I don't think he OD'd on heroin. I think it was probably something considerably stronger, because we had to mess with this dude for hours. And it gets to the point where you're doing sternum rubs and the guy's skin is literally wearing away. And you start going, we got to come up with something else. And I took a shower slide. You know what that is? Looks a little bit like this, right? Except it was a prison version, so it didn't have a bottle opener on the bottom. But I started hitting him on the bottom of the feet with it, bare feet, as hard as I could. Smack! And it would, every time you would do it, "William, good to see you." Every time I would hit the guy in the bottom of the feet, he would sit up and he would get a lung full of oxygen. And I remember the next day when he was thanking everybody in the place for keeping him alive, because it literally took hours. But watching him walk to the chow hall, the bottoms of his feet were black and blue. I mean, we ran out of places to annoy this guy. There's a lot of other, old wives' tales that people say, you can shoot someone up with this or that. If you give them something that's going to take them straight up, you give them cocaine or you give them meth or something like that, these things are supposed to work. I think Narcan is the way to go, right? Narcan is what you want to do. Unfortunately, the people that are shipping this stuff across the border are now mixing it with another substance before it gets here. When that was done, to me, took over a month to get over the soreness of that. Wendy, I believe that. The sternum rubs are absolutely brutal. I have had it done to me once, and I had it done as a demonstration in an EMT course. I've never had it done. I've never overdosed, so I never got brought back that way. I've never had an overdose in my life, oddly enough. But these processes of bringing people back don't work the same way with the drugs that are coming across the border, because that hypothetical 100 of the strength you can get off the sap of a poppy, in a lab you can go, let's make it 200. And the ass in the corner can go, let's make it 400. Let's make it 6,000. Let's turn it into carfentanyl. You may have heard of this term. Carfentanyl is literally used to tranquilize or anesthetize elephants, pachyderms, animals that weigh thousands of pounds. And even then, you put very little of it into them. But it's not a different substance. You're in a lab. You just keep doubling the strength. You just keep doubling the strength. There's no cap to what you can do with an opioid. There is a cap to what you can do with an opiate. Mother Nature has made it so that it is only going to get so strong. That's not the enemy we're fighting anymore. The enemy we are fighting today is a synthetic drug. They say that the synthetics are going to kill 54,700 people this year. You're going to hear that was fentanyl for every one of them. And the truth is, it's probably not even fentanyl for half of them anymore. And if it sounds like I'm saying something crazy, I've been saying crazy stuff since this started, but boy, my numbers have been pretty damn good. I mean, I'm not trying to sound cool, but when they were saying that there were 50 people overdosing a day, we said there's no way. It's way more than that. Now they're saying that we're down to about 220 overdose deaths a day. I'm praying that that's a real number, because we've been above 300 for years. But I'm praying that that is actually the case. There's reason to believe that that's the case. And I said this. I said, if they shut the border down, we're going to see the number drop by 20 or 30% in the first year. The reason we're not going to see it drop by a hell of a lot more than that is because these pills are coming across the border. And when you hear the bus, you go, how's that possible? Because they'll say there were enough doses in this bust to kill every single person in the United States 4 times. And you go, how's that possible? Right? How is that possible? Because people are sending hundreds and thousands, if not millions, of pills across the border. Sadly, most of these pills no longer are just fentanyl. Most of them are a newer version, newer to the street, a newer opioid called nitazines. If you're not familiar with this, I've done a couple of different shows on nitazines. I think the first one I did was 3 years ago, a long time ago, when in the Mark Wages days of the boat, we first broke talking about nitazines. And I said, this is a much cheaper drug to manufacture. This is the crystal meth of opioids. This is the easiest and the cheapest, and you can buy the ingredients damn near anywhere kind of drug that you can turn into a very potent opioid. When I said that, there was only one city in the United States of America that they had ever found any nitazines on the street. This drug was first synthesized in the 1950s, but went bang way too hard. And it was way, way more dangerous, much more prone to abuse than, say, morphine or oxymorphone or hydromorphone or hydrocodone or any of the other drugs that they were using at the time. So it kind of got put away. And it has been rediscovered by the streets. The dope dealers are not content to take that, which allegedly is 30 times stronger than fentanyl, which can be 50 to 100 times stronger than heroin, right? Which is about 8 times stronger than the morphine molecule. So you just keep stacking it up, or morphine, the drug. You just keep stacking them up, and they get stronger and stronger and stronger. It's getting to the point where it's absolutely ridiculous. This is why we have the epidemic that we have of all these deaths. However, we started to deregulate Narcan. We started to hop up the amount of Narcan that was in each nasal spray or each injection or whatever. Where are they getting it? It comes out of Mexico currently. It's coming out of Mexico. And the reason for that is, in our infinite wisdom, we passed a law that said that the nation of China, North Korea, India, all of these nations that have targeted the United States for a long time, some for financial reasons and some maybe just because they want us dead. But they were shipping fentanyl directly to people's houses for years. And they passed a law that they weren't allowed to ship any of those fentanyl products to the United States ever again. And they threatened them with massive embargoes and all kinds of tariffs and trade issues. And they stopped doing it. However, when you pass a law like that, you should probably say, by the way, you can't ship any precursor chemicals either. So they're sending 50-gallon drums full of all of the stuff you need to make nitazines or to make fentanyl or to make any of the other synthetic opioids directly to Mexico. The reason that the United States is clashing as hard as it is currently with the cartels south of the border is because of what's going on with this country. This is the #1 cause of death, and they're trying to get a hold of that. Wendy Ramirez says, Mexico is a cesspool. You know what? If it is, it's our fault in the United States. And I'm sorry, but that's the truth. You know, you cannot become the world's largest consumer of drugs and not expect the countries that butt up against you to become ports for your habit. One of the saddest things about the war on drugs is Mexico. You know, they didn't ask to become a narco state. The United States turned them into one. It's not a popular opinion, but it's a stone cold fact. We are the biggest consumers. We the American people are the biggest consumers of drugs on planet Earth by a factor of about 1,000. Nobody out there consumes drugs like we do. Why? Because we have everything. And people who have everything don't realize that they have everything. Sadly, that just seems to be the case. The more I travel and the more I see countries that are developing, right? Countries they used to call third world. Before anybody gets offended at that, that phrase literally came from any country that wasn't Russia or the United States, which left about 190-something countries that were considered third world. But as you go to these countries and you see that the materialism isn't the same, there aren't as many things to run from, right? Drugs tend to be the kind of thing where people run from their problems and run to drugs. Do you think our military, especially the Army, are hopped up on drugs also? Traditionally, there's usually a pretty large contingent of drug use in the Army, in all of the branches of service, especially when you're in a foreign theater, like a combat theater, because they don't really have time to piss test soldiers in Vietnam. And the number of soldiers who came back from Vietnam addicted to heroin were terrifying. Terrifying. You get to Afghanistan, you're going to run into the same things. They opted to treat every inmate in the federal system with treatments to make sure that people, if they had Hep C, that they would be treated. That's $1,000 a pill, right? Harvoni was $1,000 a pill at the time. It takes 80 pills to treat someone. And we're all in there scratching our dome going, why would they treat us for free, right? I mean, not for nothing. They don't usually have a whole lot of respect. Hey, Tommy Bird, good to see you. They don't usually have a lot of respect for inmates. So we were in there scratching our head going, why the hell would they treat us? Do a little research after I got out. And what I came to realize is they bought an unbelievable storehouse of this crap. to treat all of the people they were expecting to come back from Afghanistan with drug habits. They expected needle use to be rampant because there's so much heroin over there. It's a slightly different environment than Vietnam. It was less susceptible. I'm not saying people didn't come back strung out on dope. They did, but it was nothing like how rampant it was in Vietnam. So when soldiers came back and they treated everyone that needed it, they had so much left over that they started treating the federal inmates. True story. But there's always a decent amount of drug abuse during wars. In World War II, the United States was giving speed to their soldiers. The Germans were giving Privitin, which is speed, to their soldiers. The Russians were doing it. The Japanese were doing it. That was probably the war of drugs. It really was. Like no other. They were kamikaze pilots were mainlining the stuff. They were literally, giving people huge shots in the vein of methamphetamine. And if you're going to try to talk someone into flying a plane into a boat, probably not a bad choice. What do you think?
I agree.
That's just one of those. They gave me basically heroin, morphine, and other painkillers together in the hospital after I fell and broke my left arm in 2 places in half. I'm like the bionic woman inside now. I hated it. You know what? I'm glad that somebody brought this up. Make no mistake whatsoever. Everything you're taking is heroin. I'm sorry, it is. So the base drug of everything that's going to get you high as a painkiller is the morphine molecule, right? So the first painkiller that they really developed was morphine. Heroin is just a couple of molecules different. It's called diacetylmorphine, right? It's an acetyl molecule. It allows the stuff to pass the brain barrier quicker. So instead of taking a minute to get you high, it takes seconds. But it's basically all a version of the same thing. Even these synthetic opioids are still a bastardized version of the morphine molecule. So whether you're eating OxyContin or whether you're eating a hydrocodone or whether you're eating, right, whatever, or you're smoking heroin or you're shooting heroin or you're taking, all of it is the exact same thing. It's heroin in a pill. So when you go into the hospital and they give you morphine, the difference between what they put in your vein and what I was putting in mine is about 2 molecules difference. It's the exact same thing. And in order to get it out of your body takes whatever you bring in. You put hydromorphone in your body, you put heroin, diacetylmorphine in your body. In 6 hours, it goes from 6 monoacetylmorphine, which is heroin metabolized. For 6 hours, that's what it does in the body. After that, your body breaks it down into morphine so that it can process it out. So if you test a junkie, and it's a term I use for me, don't let it offend you, but if you test a junkie, it doesn't matter what their drug of choice is. If you test them 72 hours after they took it, they're going to test positive for morphine because your body is turning it into morphine so it can process it out through the liver and the kidneys. That's just kind of how it works. Interesting substance. It really is. And maybe one of the best things to ever happen to medicine. Been working a lot lately. Well, it seems like a lot. I definitely, more than I've been used to in some time. I'm feeling it, but it's a good thing. So in 3 days off, starting tomorrow. Congratulations, Tommy Bird. I love listening to anybody that's killing it. You know what I mean? You're welcome, Wendy Ramirez. The people, I want this to be a respectful show. What I mean by that is I wanted to come on and talk a little bit about this, epidemic and a little bit about the good news. But what I would like more than anything is to honor the people that we've lost. Because as far as I'm concerned, they're not lowlifes. No more than somebody with diabetes. We have much uglier symptoms than diabetes. Dry mouth, constant urination, right? The kind of things that people, weight gain, the kind of things that people are affected by if they have diabetes, or pick any other drug. You start comparing symptoms. Well, what are your symptoms, Tommy? Well, you steal, you lie, right? You commit crimes, you sell your body. Any of the things that people do in order to get the drugs are the symptoms of that disease. And those symptoms cause people to hate drug addicts. And they have very little patience for them. If you don't believe so, look at what happens when they say, well, we're going to open up a needle exchange program. The first thought, and this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life, is if you start giving needles away, people who have never, ever done heroin in their life are going to go, hey, there's a needle exchange on 6th Street. I'm going to get a drug habit. Honest to God, one of the dumbest thought processes, like you have to honestly be Forrest Gump to try to put that together and think this is going to cause more drug addiction. I have changed 180 degrees since watching everybody I know die. And I am now to the point where I think that the countries that are doing what they can to make sure that the illegal drug supply is safe are some of the most humane places on the planet. I would rather see them issue heroin to people than allow them to go out into the street and get the crap that they're getting now. Give them manufactured in a lab diacetylmorphine. And the truth of the matter is, if you gave it away and made it legal for all of the people that are already doing it, you'd be shocked how many of them would go get jobs. The symptoms don't come from the lack of drug. The symptoms come from the black market created by the prohibition that we have been under for so long. And it's an interesting argument. I say that we're going to talk about things on the lifeboat that are uncomfortable for people to hear. A woman can have an abortion because it's her body and she has the right to do whatever she wants with it. This is the argument. It has always been the argument since before Roe v. Wade. It will be the argument after Roe v. Wade is forgotten. It will always be the argument. I, however, because I have a penis, can't do what I want with my body, right? If I wanted to put heroin in my body, is that not me saying I can do whatever I want with my body too? It's a completely different dynamic if what you're trying to do is put drugs into your body. And sadly, animals seek out buzzes, right? Animals in nature do this. This is part of the human experience. And I'm not saying that everybody should be experimenting with drugs. I don't believe that that's the case. But I don't think that it should be villainized to the point where a country with 5%, less than 5% of the population of the planet incarcerates 26% of all of the people that are in prison. The United States leads the world in incarceration at about the same rate that they lead the world in drug addiction. Shocker, right? Because our prisons are filled with drug addicts. Even the people that are in there for robbing banks, they're not robbing banks to drive Ferraris and live like the people do in Fast and Furious. They're robbing banks to put dope in their arm. I've never met a junkie never met a bank robber that didn't do it for a dope habit. Never. It's just how it works. And most of the crimes that people are doing in there, you think drug dealer, and because of movies like Scarface, and movies like that, you think of these guys with all of the, duffel bags full of cash, or you think of the movie Blow with Johnny Depp. And it's like these guys got rooms full of $100 bills. Well, I got news for you. Most dope dealers are just trying to support their habit. I never recognized those were diseases until you explained it in a stream. My outlook on it has changed. May all of those who have departed, may you rest in peace, and may prayers to those families left. Thank you, Wendy. It's a beautiful thing to say. I'm going to keep this to about 30 minutes. One of the reasons is I hope it gets seen, and longer streams don't really turn into videos and translate the same way. And I hope that people see this. I hope that it's shared for a couple of reasons. Number one, because I spent 4 years saying we could shut the border down if we wanted to. And people said it's not that easy. It's really easy, which means that we were willing to sacrifice 1 million people for politics. And I'm not blaming, if you think I'm blaming the Democrats, I'm not, because the Republicans had the House, they didn't do it, right? They had all of the, they had the White House, and they had both houses of Congress sewed up. They could have shut it down. Nobody wants to be the person to be the bad guy. Everybody wants to campaign on it, but nobody does anything. And Republicans would vote against bills to shut down the border because they didn't want to give Democrats a win. Democrats would vote against shutting down the border because they didn't want to give Republicans a win. And what you ended up with is 1 million dead people. This is a war, right? China's not our friend, they're our enemy. And currently, they're sending stuff across the border, right, or to Mexico, and Mexico's shipping it across the border. And the stuff that's coming across now, Narcan ain't going to fix. See, they're mixing it with a very strong chemical called xylazine, which is closest on the family tree to a benzodiazepine, the Valium kind of family. It's a tranquilizer, but it's a tranquilizer made for horses and cows. Fact is that drug addicts also die by taking their lives while on drugs and in crisis. Absolutely. Suicide is massive among drug users because the idea of waking up every morning knowing you're going to be sick as soon as your eyes open gets to a point. I know of 4 people that I called friends who hung themselves their first night in county jail because they could not face 7 days of being dope sick. That's all it was going to be. It was going to be 7 days of being dope sick. So there's a lot of medical assisted treatment out there today. There are so many different options for somebody trying to get off of the slavery, right? The slavery that is the morphine molecule. There are so many different ways to do it with the assistance of a doctor. Suboxone, Subutex, Sublocade. There are methadone. There are so many different avenues that you can take. We really need to start with the message of, guess what? You can get off this stuff without getting sick. That's the message. You see somebody that's on it, just tell them you do not have to get dope sick to beat this stuff, and watch how many people quit. Trank scares me, seeing people like that. I don't blame you, and it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. And if you're not sure what she's talking about, you can go and watch any of the shows that we've done on Kensington Street or the Kensington neighborhood up in Pennsylvania and near Philly. Kensington has been an open-air drug flea market since I was a freshman in college. But back then it was coke and crack. Now it is, you can get, allegedly, you can get the fake Percocet 30 fentanyl, half fentanyl and half xylazine trank pills, go for about 50 cents to $1 a pill, depending on how many you buy. That's 50 cents a fix. You got to say to yourself, if you got anything on the ball, how does that stuff get across the Mexican border? Go from the Mexican border all the way up the eastern seaboard, right? It's got to go across the country to the right. Then it's got to go all the way up the eastern seaboard. And by the time it gets to Pennsylvania, it's going to go to a dealer who's going to break it up into smaller sacks and give it to street level dealers who are then going to give it to pushers who literally are going to stand on street corners to sell it. 50 cents? How in hell does anybody make any money? How did you pay the guy that smuggled it and then smuggled it all the way to Philadelphia, and then the dealer, and then the street dealer, and then the pusher? You got 5 people that are touching that thing. What are they putting, a nickel a pill on it? It doesn't make any sense, unless the goal isn't to make money, it's to kill men, right? And women of military age. Number 1 cause of death, 18 to 55. If they rolled up on the shores of the United States today and we had to draft everybody, you got any idea what the Army would look like? A crap load of people need methadone before they could go out and fight. If it's the number 1 cause of death, how many people are getting high every day and not dying? This is an epidemic that is so much bigger than anyone could possibly imagine. I would like to end this show, if I can, by putting a name up there. My friend Bud. I could put 50 names up there, but somebody had sent me an email and said, if you know somebody that's passed, maybe they should just put a name up there. If you don't want to put their actual name, you can put a nickname, you can put anything else. But the death of some of these people killed me, and I don't want to see these people forgotten. And I don't want to see these people turned into statistics on government charts where they talk about how these people are addicts. They were sons, they were daughters, they were sisters and brothers, and they were creatures and creations of God with nothing but potential, right? To be the president of the United States, to be the most successful entrepreneur that ever lived, or to just be a good human being that goes to work and pays their taxes and comes home and has a family. Between now and the next time I see you, do me a favor. Put a little love in your heart, and for the love of God, reach out and try to save somebody. My name is Tommy. This is The Love Boat. We'll see you on the next one. God bless.